Hey guys, this is Tim, back again with another video, and today I'm gonna show you a little bit about how to create this acid dissolving metal effect that I recently created, because a lot of people were asking me how do you do this and can you please make a video about it. So I figured, why the hell not, right? Let's close this down. It was actually inspired by this video by Dave Stewart. It's an awesome video, so let me play it if it wants to play. Let me refresh it, I guess. And he did like super awesome erosion, and this inspired me to also have a go at it. There's sort of the basic info on how he did it. Still took me a couple of hours to figure out how to do that, but ended up looking pretty cool. So let's go over how I did it. Basically, what I did is I used VDB erosion. So let me show you what it is. So let's just before we start, let's create a project. It's always good to start create a project folder before you start working, so it just auto saves and you have all of the folders set up. So let's do that. Go to tutorials, corrosion, and do I guess go in here, corrosive tutorial, right? Corrosion, Houdini. Right, and we don't need all of that crap, so let's do it like that and call it corrosion Houdini. Alright. And corrosion. Alright, so let's save it like that. Now we have the project set up, and now let's let me show you what the VDB erosion is. So let's create our trusted little piggy. Do VDB from polygons, and let's make a somewhat high res VDB, so surface VDB. And then we have VDB reshape, not resample, reshape. So what that does is you can reshape a piggy, and so you can make like a fat pig like even fatter. And let's make the resolution a little bit lower. You can like make him fatter, but you can also dilate it, like erode it. So basically what it does now, it's eroding the whole pig. But the cool thing is, which I didn't know before I started doing the corrosion effect, is that you also have this optional VDB mask. And what it does is it takes a volume, and everything inside of the volume will get affected by the reshape, and everything outside of it won't. And my computer, because it's kind of hot in here, my computer is completely blazing, like it's 420 in here. So so I hope you can't hear it, but if you can, then you know why it's so loud in here. Anyway, let's do a VDB from polygons. Now, by the way, let's create a sphere. By the way, let's do it like this. Let's create a sphere. Do a polygon mesh. Let's get our piggy like that, and let's make our sphere encapsulate our piggy like this. And for this to work, we need to create this into a VDB for polygons. It needs to be a VOC VDB. So now we have a VOC VDB, maybe a little bit higher resolution. And now we can use this inside of the reshape as a mask. So if I'm putting it in here, and now I can erode, I'm only eroding where the sphere is. And obviously, because this is all procedural, you can move this around. So that's the basic idea of doing the erosion. That's also what's happening in here basically, but it's being driven by the fluid. Right, so now let's start by creating a box, and then have our box a little bit smaller. So let's maybe like 1.5 high, maybe 3 wide, do like that. Nice little box. Put a transform, rotate a little bit. There we go. Very nice. And then put a collision source because we want to be able to use it for collisions later on. Let's put a output on the right, and let's increase the volume resolution, because what collision source is basically, it creates a like a thing that's already set up for collisions. So you have the VDB set up for collisions and everything. The right output is the VDB, and the left output is the geometry. Let's call this VDB, and let's check the resolution. If you middle click on it, you can see the resolution in here. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. So now we have a nice resolution for this. Let's call this geometry. Very nice. Right. And call this our metal plates. There we go. Right, so now what we want to do is we want to just use the shelf tools to create a fluid emitter. So let's do a sphere. It's going to be our emitter. And let's move it up a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. Like that. Gorgeous. Right, and then go to the particle fluids tab, hold control, click this and press enter. And we're gonna get a emitter. And we can delete this particle fluid stuff and call the auto.network asset sim maybe. And by the way, if you hear my computer blazing like it's 420, that's because it's kind of hot in here. So that's why it might be a little bit loud. I don't know if you can pick up on it on the recording, but that's what it is. Alright, so let's call this emitter and go into the asset sim. And now we have a little fluid sim here with a way too big bounding box. By default, it always creates a way too big bounding box. So a little bit about how flip works. Flip are particles moving through a volume. So if you go onto the flip solver, you have particle motion and volume motion. So the volume is basically, it's determining kind of the flow of the water, and the particles are moving through the volume to like create, to do the water thing, like splashes and stuff, you know. But we don't need this box to be like this insanely big, so let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's show our thing, and let's just scale it down because we don't need such a big bounding volume. It will just slow everything down. And there we go. Very nice. Right, something like that, I guess. And I guess we can maybe make our emitter a little bit smaller. Something like that. Alright, very nice. And that's in our flip fluid object to close boundaries so that the fluid can spill out. And let's test what we have now. And because our resolution is way too low, nothing is actually happening. Let's put a little bit higher, and there we go. Now we have water, and it's gonna splash through the thing, obviously, because we haven't set it up for collisions yet. And it's gonna splash on the floor. Right, very nice. So what we want to do is we want to put down a static solver, and I know you don't need a static solver, but just for organization purposes, this is nice for now. And do a static object, and right now we're just gonna put our put this thing in it just to test it out. Alright, so put your geometry in here. This is gonna be the object that you will see in your viewport. So we can turn this off. And then in here, in the collisions tab, to proxy volume, we're gonna put the VDB, and that's gonna be the volume that's gonna use for collisions. So let's turn off display and check our collision guide, and we can have some more uniform divisions. There we go. Now we have a nice, maybe a little bit lower. Gorgeous. Right, fine for now. Alright, so let's see if this works. Alright, and that works. That's awesome. So now we created our little flip simulation. And now what we want to do before we do the whole corrosion thing is we want to set up some viscosity for our fluid sim. Because let me go to my original viscosity sim. Let's grab the flip book, because you don't really see that great in the render. We have like this this look of some parts moving faster than others. I liked just the whole like look of it, sort of eating away at it, and then sometimes moving faster, like layers moving on top of each other. It gives this nice sort of more acidy like look, which I liked, instead of just going straight down. Or so we're gonna do randomized viscosity for that. But first we need to enable viscosity. So let's go to flip solver, volume motion, because this is the volume thing. Go to viscosity, enable viscosity, and click enable viscosity by attribute. And now on the flip fluid object, we also need to enable it. So just to test it out, let's put this to 100. And let's play this. And now you can see we have a very viscous fluid. It's obviously not what we want, so let's put it back to 0. So it's not viscous again. We're gonna write a little script to randomize it a little bit. First, before we want to do that, we want to go into the flip solver again and go to particle motion and click on add ID attributes. What that will do is it will add IDs to all of the particles. Because normally particles have point numbers, but point numbers aren't constant. Like if particles, if points die, then the point number will move to another location. Or with flip reseats or adds particles all of the time. So the point number, like point 100, might be here one frame and over there the next frame, and it will just jump around. And to do something like if you want the more controllable look, you don't want to use the point numbers, you want to use IDs. So now if we go into our geometry spreadsheet and go to flip fluid and then into geometry, and then you can see now we have an ID attribute. Like if we turn this off again, then we don't have it. Now we have it. Very nice. So as you can see in the first frame, they're all lining up, but obviously if we're gonna doing it like this, as you can see, 0.0 is no long is now ID 104, because it keeps adding stuff in there. All right. So enough about IDs. What we want to do is we want to put something in here in the particle velocity, because these are the particles that's going to carry the viscosity information. We want to put a pop wrangle, because like anything that uses particles, so flip, grains, rigid bodies, like so long as you're using bullet, can just take pop nodes. Doesn't matter what it is, you can just use pop nodes. So we want to put a pop wrangle in the particle velocity. We're just gonna write a little script. It's not gonna be difficult. What we want to do is we want to type rand, and we want to type f at viscosity equals rand, and then bracket, and then add ID, and then close the thing. Now what we're gonna get is we're gonna get a viscosity attribute. So let's check where our viscosity is. There we go. Now we have a viscosity, and it's going to be between 0 and 1. So now it means some are going to have 0 viscosity and some are going to have 1. And this may be already what you're after, but you can see some are still like floating really fast. I like a little bit more control. So what I want to do is type fit01, and so fit01 is basically gonna say, okay, we have a value which is gonna be between 0 and 1, which is what we had, the rand ID, and then I'm gonna fit that value between other values. So I'm gonna go after the ID, put a semicolon, and type ch, open the things and type, do this, min, and that's gonna be the channel min, and then do the channel max. Right, and then close the brackets, Control Enter to activate it, and then open the sliders. And we want to have a minimum viscosity of 0.1 and a max of 0.7. Alright, so now I'm gonna do this. This should give our... why is it not working? Is this because this is at 0? Particle velocity. And this should work. But why doesn't it? It's pointed to... I think it's the top ones that aren't being activated. I think they're getting activated at the second frame. I think that's the main issue. Because probably if I'm gonna put this really high, let me just double check. There aren't gonna be any that are gonna splash. Double check, by the way, the color. And that's not gonna work inside of. Let's do a. Let me double check. I'm kind of curious now. I never checked in the. I never checked that before. So I'm kind of curious. Let me double check this thing. So let me. Yeah, so as you can see, only the top ones before they get emitted don't have viscosity yet, and the viscosity gets added when they start emitting. So that's why they're still 0, but it's gonna be fine for what we're doing now. So as you can see, like if I'm previewing it now, you have like randomized viscosity. Anyway, so let's go back to our sim now that we got that out of the way. And now, if you're wondering what I just wondered, then you know the answer. Anyway, alright, so now we have randomized viscosity between 0.1 and 0.7. So I'm gonna play this. Then you see you get this nice sort of drooping like effect, which was the effect that we were after. And of course you can randomize this even more if you want. You go like 10 for some and 0 for some other, and can go all crazy with this. And also what we want to do is we want to go in volume motion again and enable surface tension, which is gonna create surface tension and create little like create a sheeting effect, let droplets group together a little bit and just create an overall nicer look for like a small scale type of fluid. I think I put it on 220 for my original sim, so let's also just put it to 220 for this. And next up, we're just gonna do the erosion. All right, so now for our erosion, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a subsolver, and we're not gonna connect it to anything for corrosive, because I actually didn't know that, but you don't have to connect it to anything. Like if you're gonna connect it to something, it's gonna load in that DOP geometry, but you can also let it do its own thing, just stand alone from anything, which is what we're gonna do. Let's go in here, and it's obviously not gonna load anything because nothing is collected. But what I can do is I can do a .io and then go to this one, asset sim, and load in our flip fluid object, do flip. And let's turn off our visualizer again. And now you can see we're loading dops inside dops. Very nice, right? And basically this is also just a dop import, so it's not gonna do like, but now we're just having control over what we're importing. So that's for one thing we want, and for the other thing we want to do an object merge. And we're gonna do the metal plate, and we're gonna import the VDB. So let's go into this object, and now we have our nice little VDB in here. And now let's let this simulate a couple more frames, and then we're gonna do VDB reshape. All right. So let's put it to erode. And obviously this is gonna erode fine, but what we want to do is, like I said before, we want to have the mask. So what we want to do is, when I have this flip sim, I want to do VDB from particles and connect it to this one. Create a VOC, and let's do a slightly higher resolution. Let's do a distance just to check. Get it to work, do the minimum radius and voxels down. I guess something like this. Now we have it, and we have a nice little density field. Alright, so that we can use inside of our VDB reshape. So now you can see, right, so now we can see is that it's it's eroding away where the particles are. But there is a problem. Let me show you what the problem is. So you may think that you could just go into the asset sim and now put in our VDB over here inside of this one and inside of this one. By the way, you can also just put VDBs in here. It will just display the VDB then instead of polygons, which we are doing now for now. And then we want to turn on deforming geometry, which means that it's going to check every frame if the geometry has deformed. And now when I'm going back to here and I'm gonna play this, then you may think that it does actually work. So let me play through it. What you can see is it is corroding away at the surface, but if you pay close attention, let me go a little bit closer. Not the highest resolution VDB. You can see it just moves through it. It is not keeping any of the information. It's corroding, but it's only corroding that frame. It's not keeping any of the corrosive information of the previous frame. Which is the one thing that took me a little bit time to solve on how to work. And the word solve is what we're gonna use. Alright, because basically what we're gonna be using is we're gonna use a solver inside of our solver. I didn't know you could do that, but apparently you can, so that's good. But before we do that, let's create some controls to set our erosion effect. By the way, let's wait with it before we let's first drop it in our solver. So let's cut like all of this stuff. So cut it, then connect the inputs to the solver. Then we're gonna paste it back in our solver, and we want to take the second input, obviously, over our which is going to be our fluid sim. And then the VDB reshape, the first input is going to be the previous frame, because we want to obviously keep feeding back into our previous setup. So we're gonna want to do like connect this up and then connect this up, and now go to our null, call this out, I guess, and put the out inside of our collision geometry. And now theoretically this should work, so I'm gonna be right back. Alright, so I made a little flipbook. Let's play through it. and as you can see now it's corroding through it quite quickly because I put the corrosive value to it's to 1, but I guess you can put it lower. Now you can play around with these settings. So now we have our basic little setup. So let's get into doing the whole loading this into subs, like back again, so we can create like a little web map. And there's one issue that I don't have this time, I think, that I'm still having it a little bit. As you can see in the beginning, it's eating away a little bit on the metal. Let me check if it will keep doing that. There was a way around that I had to work in my previous project, but now it's working fine. So let's keep at it like that. If it does eat away a lot, what you can do, what I did in my previous setup, is that I created a bound object from the original object, which is this one. Do a VDB from polygons on that one, and then put the density in here and do a volume wrangle, and then just put add density is 0, and then do a VDB combine. Let's put this a bit higher resolution, and do a VDB combine where we're combining like the fluid VDB with the other VDB. So let's load this in. Let's wait until, yeah, there it is. And by the way, we need to do a bound on the previous frame, I think. Alright, and then do and then by the way, we need to do add. We need to add it. Right, so then we have a actual volume where everything is 0, and then here it does have density. And this solved in my previous file the problem of the thing being eaten away. Still in the beginning, it's still being eaten away, but it used to be a lot more in my example, and that solved it. But for this example, it doesn't seem to do a lot. So again, I can just let me delete it. I'll leave it in here for now, but so if you're running into any issues like that, then that might be something you can do to solve it. Let's go create a geometry and call it loads assets, I guess, and then do a dop import. File node, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna load our assets, and I think fetch geometry from .network. Alright, and then we get this little sim here, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna just cache this out, so do a file cache. And I have all these presets, and I have a separate tutorial about how to set all these presets up, so I'm not gonna go over that for now. I'm gonna just save out this one for now, call it sim, call it asset sim, and I'm gonna save this out. So I'm gonna be right back. Alright, so I cached this out, and this is what I have, and it's obviously it's a very low resolution simulation. If you're gonna do this yourself and you want a good result, You're obviously gonna need to do a much higher res flip simulation, have a much higher res VDB. But for now, let's just keep working with this low res. So let's do a blast after the file cache, and let's blast out the collision and call this keep fluid. And on the other side, we want to blast out this one and call this keep VDB. And now we want to create a mesh from our fluid. So this with fluid surface on this one, of course. So let's do that. So it should be fine for now. We're not gonna get any better results than this anyway, because it's not really the best fluid sim. It's kind of too low res. We don't want polygon soup, we just want surface polygons. For Redshift, I don't think Redshift can do poly soup. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think it does, because Octane also doesn't do that. Alright, so let's also take this VDB and do convert VDB, put it to polygons, and we have our polygons here. And let's do file caches for either one. Oh, it's cache for, got this fluid mesh, and probably do like 100 frames. And the other one, let's do VDB mesh. Let's save, and let's save both of these out. It shouldn't take too long, probably. It's also quite nice that now I have 10 gig Ethernet back in my home setup, so I can, and I'm working from my server. It's like working locally because it's really fast. It's really nice for like heavy caches and stuff, and still being able to have everything on the server is just useful. All right, so let's wait for this to save out. It's almost done. Alright. Almost there. Almost there. There we go. Alright, load from disk. Right, so now we have this, and by the way, let's put our frame range also just to be 100. Alright, very nice. So that's eroding. Then we have our fluid surface here. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we want to create a wetness attribute. Attribute wrangle, and call it like add wetness. And type f at wetness equals 0.2 for the fluid. We don't want it to be 1 from the start, just because we want it to slowly start eating away at the metal. We don't want it to instantly be completely eroded. This is why we're starting with 0.2. And on this one, obviously, it's just going to be 0. So now let's create a solver. And we're going to create a wetness attribute. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to transfer the attributes from our original, like from our water to our mesh. Let's put our mesh in the first input, this one in the second input. And we're going to use a point cloud. If you don't know what a point cloud is, basically, if you ever used the attribute transfer, which you probably have, let's put this one on first input, first and second input. It's you can basically, it's gonna look at a certain point, of our original input. So let's say it's gonna look at like 0.45121, and it's gonna look around itself for the second input, and then see if, hey, this point is close and it has a wetness attribute. Okay, so now I'm gonna take that wetness attribute and I'm gonna get that wetness attribute. So it's just gonna look around in a circle, and you can specify the radius and the like the max sample count and stuff. But we're gonna do that ourselves, and let's create a visualizer first so we can visualize it. So press D and then plus color. Let's create wetness, and wetness is an attribute. And as you can see, you can like transfer the. Let's make it out. You can like specify radius, and it will transfer it. But we're gonna do this ourselves because we also want to include the previous frame. So let's do attribute swap. Have our like our metal plate in first input, our water in second input, and our previous frame in the third input. Now what we want to first do is we want to bind our original wetness. So it's going to look at the wetness that we currently have, and also we want to bind the export, because we also want to export wetness. So let's export our wetness. There we go. And now what we want to do is we want to open a point cloud. So let's point cloud open. And we want to sample our original position, because we're going to look at each individual point of this one. And then we're going to look at the second input. And then we're going to promote our radius and our max points. So the radius is like how big does the radius need to be in which it's going to look, and how many points is it going to look at. And now let's add our put an add, and we need to specify which attribute we're going to look at for the point cloud. So do point cloud filter, and that's gonna let us determine which attribute we can look at. And let's type wetness, and let's add that wetness to our original. As you can see, we basically created a attribute transfer. Let's put a, and people are shouting to their dog outside. I hope you can't hear it on the recording anyway. Alright, so now we basically create an attribute transfer, but obviously this is not exactly what we want. We also want to include the previous frame. So what we want to do is we want to first like double click on these ones so we can keep these parameters. And then we want to duplicate our point cloud and also do point cloud on the third input, and then add our third input to the wetness as well. Alright, so now if we're gonna run this solver, let's reset, let's run through it, and obviously we need to view our solver. And as you can see, it's transferring. It's going up way too quickly, as you can see. So I guess we need to turn down this wetness. So Control 1. And what you can also say, let's run through it, because there's another thing. We're getting this bleeding edge around our corrosion, and that might be what you want, or it might not. I guess that depends on the look. Like if you're gonna keep this, you're gonna get, instead of a hard edge, you're gonna get like the corrosive metal also like eroding over the layer, so where the water hasn't, where the acid hasn't hit. So that's a personal thing, I guess. How you can get rid of that is just you can decrease the max number of points. So now if I'm gonna run through it, it's gonna look at less points around it, and now you can see I'm just getting a hard edge. And that's basically how you do a wet map. And this wet map we can use in our shader, obviously. So right, So let's say this is we're happy with this wetmap. Let's cache this out. So export cache. And again, if you want to know other presets, I have a tutorial called 7 Houdini workflow tips. Check that out if you want to know how to set that up. Just gonna save this out, and I'm gonna be right back. All right, so I'm back. Just cached out. It's not too heavy in this case. If you have more points, because this is all pretty low point count, and obviously it's gonna be a lot heavier. But like as I said, if you merge this together with your fluid now, then you have you basically have that following the water. So with this one, we can actually start going into our shader building. What we want to do first is we want to promote this to promote the wetness from point to vertex, just so we have a little bit more information in our shader. I'm not sure in Redshift if it will. I think it will also work with point information, but vertex information is going to be a little bit more precise. So let's So now we have it on our vertices. Basically, how it is with vertices. You have each point, and then each point in every corner has a vert. So each point has 4 verts, basically. Let me check, where can you supposed to go to? Me. No, I wanna display my verts. There we go. So now, like, each of these have the attribute, and because there are more than just one point, it can blend a little bit better. And that's what we're gonna use for our shading. So to prepare that thing, let's emitter harder metal plate. Alright, so before we set up any of the Redshift stuff, let's first create our render nodes. What I always like to do is I like to have separate nodes that I'm rendering. So call this asset render, I guess, and call the other one plate render. Alright, so it's the asset and the plate, and let's merge everything in there, just so you have like a distinction between your work nodes that you're working in and the render nodes. So the plate is gonna be out metal. Merge this into this object. Alright, call it metal. And the other one is going to be the asset. And I'm gonna do out asset. Alright, so now we have no, not in the file, obviously. We need to do the to merge this one in this object. We can hide this. Let's visualize our first foot. Right, so now we have our render nodes, and let's color them green. And I think I'm gonna just run like a higher res sim for this, so we have actually something to work on now for the shading, because this is gonna be this is not gonna be perfect to shade on. So I'm gonna do that now. So I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna come back with a higher resolution cache. Alright, so I'm back. I made a few minor changes in the setup. I made the plate a little bit smaller, so it would already drop off within the 100 frame time time frame. In my original thing it was a little bit longer, obviously, the animation, but I wanted it to at least go through the whole thing and drop off of it. I added a ground plane instead of doing the closed boundaries, so that I had some control over like turn on off the bounce and increasing the friction, because I wanted it to stick like this instead of with the version 1 that I had, where it would, let me go to the water. So with the version 1 where it would just spread out and not having any control over that. Alright, so that's something I changed. I changed the viscosity a little bit. I changed the surface tension a little bit. I just tweaked a little bit and then I rendered. That's why I simmed out a somewhat higher resolution. It's not as high res as I did for the final thing, especially the flip. As you can see, it's a little bit stringy fluid, but it should be fine now for trying out some lighting and shading. Okay, so another thing that I did was doing a little smoke sim, which I'm gonna go over quickly. I'm not gonna go into too much detail on how to do that, or at least make it look really good. Just gonna be a basic pyro. Let's call this just pyro. Go to object. Let's object merge. Let's go to our plate render. Let's put it into this object, and let's make a by the way, let's go to our load asset and let's do this thing before. Let's remove the promotion of the vertex map. Let's move the vertex map promotion to here, and because we want to use the point attributes, let's go to here and go to load this in and check our attributes. So let's check our wetness. And why aren't we seeing anything? Let's make another visualizer. Wetness. Alright, there we have our this thing. Now what we can do is we can scatter based on attributes. So attribute's gonna be wetness. Gonna turn off relax iterations. We're gonna just crank up this one. So 15,000 maybe, 25,000. Perfect. Alright, so now we have this, and let's do a VDB from particles. Do a little bit smaller. Let's first check if it wants to grab it. At least need to decrease the minimum radius in voxels. Let's put it down, put this down. Right now we're getting somewhere. Point radius a little bit bigger maybe. One is fine. Let's make the point radius even bigger, just to make sure that we capture everything. Alright, this is looking good. Let's do a density field from that. Now is it grabbing anything? Let's do a volume visualizer to just check if we're, I need to call it code density. Let's grow our density, turn it up. Right, so we're having some density. Let's maybe make the point size even bigger. Right, this Should be decent enough, I think, for now. Right, let's cache this out. Let's cache fluid source sequence. Alright, I'm gonna cache this out and be right back. Alright, so we have our cache here. Let's do a .NET network. Yep, there we go. Let's plug it in, do a smoke solver. Not gonna go into too many crazy details on how to do this pyro stuff. There's plenty of good tutorials for that. You just want to get some in there for the Redshift rendering as well. Let's do a source volume. Put it in here. Go to pyro. Put in maybe a null for our out, and let's drop that in there. There we go. Let's turn on simulation, and let's make our thing a little bit bigger. I always find it curious how in flip solver you have to select this to make it bigger, and then in pyro you have to select that one to make it bigger, but whatever. And it's always also annoying that if you make it on sub level, the .NET, that you can't do show all objects. Anyway, should be big enough. You do a gas resize, fluid dynamic, I guess, pre-solve, so that will resize it. Let's check when our thing starts emitting particles. We're just gonna put our .NET to start there, so it's around 10. Put it to start frame 10. Go into there. Alright, let's crank up the resolution a little bit, and let's turn on OpenCL. Because for pyro, it's usually gonna be quite a bit faster. Okay, now we're having this, and I'm suddenly remembering that I need an extra volume. I only have density. I also want temperature. So I'm gonna do another one. I'm gonna do this position and just have call this temperature. Save this out. Alright, so now we have our temperature as well, so let's go into this one, and now we should theoretically also we have to do skill source volume to -1, I guess. Let's do skill temperature and let's go to -1. Because VDBs are inverted values, so. Right, it's looking not that good, but at least it's working. So I'm not gonna put too much time into making this look really good. So it's doing there. It's emitting smoke now. Let's do a gas fueled VOP to plug it into the velocity update. Let's do a curl noise. Plug in our position and type. Let's put in our position. Gonna add some curl noise to the whole thing. Do a bind for the velocity, and I bind export for the velocity. All right. Go like that. Do an add the curl noise to the velocity. Let's promote all of these parameters. And maybe what we want to do is we want to multiply the how the effect happens by the density. So it's gonna happen like the more dense it is, the more colors is gonna go in there. Alright, so let's see what this is gonna do. A little bit extreme. Let's turn it down. .1. Let's do a let's up the frequency. Too much. 333, something like that. And it's going through it a little bit, but I guess, do we mind or are we gonna add a collider? I guess we might as well add a collider. So we'll merge here, do a or maybe, yeah, we're gonna do that? Yeah, we're gonna do a collider. So do a static object, let's merge it in there, go to our load asset sim, let's go to our keep VDB, because we already have the collision mesh anyway, so the collision, go to static object, go to collisions, go to proxy volume, put that one in. I guess we could also put in subpath, but use the forming. Let's see what this does. It's making it quite a bit slower, so maybe we only wanna enable this for the final sim. As you can see now, it's not going through the thing anyway. I'm just gonna disable it for now. You can do it for your final sim, but at least you know how to add it in. So now at least we have somewhat of a smoke sim. Not the most high quality sim now, but you can add some older stuff like turbulence and shredding and everything like that. I'm just gonna run this. Maybe I'm gonna change some stuff, and I'm gonna run this. I'm gonna be back when I have the cache. All right, so I changed some stuff here and there. What I did is I added a gas dissipate to do some dissipation, gas turbulence. I added, well, the gas field swap is the same. What I did is I did add the collider, but I went to the to this one. I put a time shift to be on the last frame, because you're not gonna notice it anyway if the collision isn't perfect. Yeah, now we have this smoke coming off of it, and it's not. You can get better result if you're gonna tweak this. The main thing is this is how you set it up, emitting from the scatter points, because you don't want to emit it from the fluid itself, because the fluid obviously isn't hot. It's just gonna the corrosion is gonna make this smoke. That's the main issue. So yeah, let's just keep this as a random node. Yeah, let's first, before we do any render, I guess, let's maybe give this some normals, I guess. Let's turn off the visualizer, maybe do a flipbook of how this looks before we go do any render stuff. Let's make a RobNet. I like to use OpenGL nodes for doing flipbooks, as I'm in my Houdini quick tips thing. There's how that all works. I'm gonna call it acid flap, I guess. Let's do scene, do candidate objects, do pyro, plate render, acid render, and which camera do we have? Right. to go into the correct node, obviously. Need to make a camera now. Let's call it render cam maybe. And cannot light, we don't have any lights, so let's just turn that off. And I think these should be good for now. So let's render a flipbook. I corrected the gamma to being 2.2, and let's render a flipbook. All right. So I finished doing the flipbook. Let's check it. So it's looking okay. Not really completely happy with the way the smoke looks, but it's fine for now. You can tweak this all you want. So we did it out of the way. Let's start making renders for this, I guess. All right. So for all this render stuff, we have our render node set up here. Let's add Redshift parameters to everything. There are Redshift tab. Add object properties for our camera. Let's add camera properties, and let's click Redshift to make a output node. And I accidentally clicked it twice. I guess I can just do it again. All right. So now we have our Redshift stuff set up. Also, I want to create a grid to do like little reflections for the fluids and stuff. Let's make it like super big and make our camera in this angle so we don't see the horizon, and call this ground. And it's also going to be a render object. And we're gonna do the shading inside our shopnet. You can do it in material network now, but I'm just gonna do it in shop because we don't have that many materials anyway. So let's create the materials that we need. So create the asset material, and it's already assigned, as you can see, because I had already recorded this a little bit before I decided, oh, I also need to do the smoke. So now I'm recording it again. That's why it's auto assigning. Anyway, let's do the metal plates, and let's assign that one, and let's do the ground. So now everything is assigned. Let's turn off the OpenGL, maybe for. Let's keep it like that, but maybe like a little bit darker. Alright. Alright, so now what's next? Let's make a light. Let's make a Redshift light dome. And where is it? There it is. Redshift light dome, and let's turn off enabling viewport, and let's add a HDRI. I'm gonna use one of these HDRIs from this guy called ZBYG, and he has 3 packs from free studio HDRIs, which are quite nice, and they're free, so that's perfect. And I don't need the Redshift light, by the way. I need the light dome. So let's have the light dome. Go to shader and dome map. And I think for my original I used number 15, I think. Alright, so let's select that, call this our HDRI. And let's open our render view, and for this one let's do another network view and put this to outs. And then we have, okay, then we have our objects here, shaders here, and let's press render. And right now it's looking really horrible, obviously. Let's also already do some assignments. I like to do my render settings first. As I said, I have a separate tutorial on how to do all the preset stuff. I want to force some objects, so I want to do the ground, I want to do the plate render, and I want to do the asset render. I'm not going to do the pyro yet, that's going to be a separate render. So let's click render. Completely gorgeous. Right, let's do the intensity down a little bit maybe. Just leave it to 1 now, I guess. Right, so let's first do the ground. Let's make a redshift. Where are you materials? Just a regular redshift material. And let's make it almost black. Never completely black, because nothing is ever completely black in real life. And let's make it look a little bit rough. Let's go color frame. Let's go to our IPR. And yeah, live update is on. That's awesome. Alright, so that's good enough now for our for the background thing, and we move our camera up a little bit. And I think I wasn't in the camera. Right. So like that should be fine. Right. So now let's do our metal plate and just do a regular material now before we start building the whole shade, because the metal shade is obviously going to be the most complex. Let's just give this for now a just a random thing, like maybe like platinum, and then we can first do the fluid, and then we can go over the metal plate, but just so that it has some look to it, that we can work on the fluids. Maybe something a little bit darker, just maybe no iron, and let's make it like just make it darker maybe. Right, so now just to work on this is fine. We're gonna change this obviously. Go to our asset, go to materials, Redshift material again, and that is a preset. Use the water. I don't remember the exact settings that I used for any of this. I just played around with all of the settings a little bit. I think I had it like have a little bit of diffuse color, so you can tint it a little bit. Want to tint maybe the specular a little bit. Let's go for something like a little bit greenish maybe. That's too much. Maybe I guess maybe acid is a little bit more, more index of reflection, and let's decrease the spec a little bit. Alright, so that's fine for now. We can tweak this later, maybe a little bit less dispersion. Or a little bit more, depending on how you want to interpret it. Alright, let's leave that like that for now. And now let's do the main event for the Redshift shader. Let's do the, let's close this down. Let's do the metal plate. Right, so for the base metal shader, I've decided now to just copy my original network, because I was setting this up, but just the whole tweaking of the thing to get the right look, it just takes too much time to show everything on screen. It's easier to just show the network and go through why I did certain things, because basically it's all just tweaking of the materials, and to get the exact same look, this just works easier. So I'm just gonna go over how everything is linked up instead of building from scratch like I did in the rest of the tutorial. So anyway, As you can see, I have a material blender with 3 materials hooked into there. So the base metal, the corrosion, and this is actually the, let's call it curvature metal. And basically what it is. So let's just go over all of the materials. So the base material is just what I always just like to do is I like to just use one of the presets and then tweak the settings to get to the look that I want. So just get a preset that's sort of what you want to get. So it's sort of silverish, I guess, and then just tweak the parameters that you wanna do. So for the silver, I don't think I changed too much. I think I decreased the reflection a little bit, and you can go through the file. If you download the file, you can look at this. And it's still, this is looking different, obviously, from the way that it's looking inside of. Let me, by the way, turn off my depth of field for now. I'm gonna go over this later. But so yeah, what I'm doing is basically everywhere is I'm blending materials based on some attributes. So I'm blending based on the wetness, for example. I'll first just go over the base metal. So as you can see, there's something hooked into here with a texture, and it's let's open it up. It's hooked into the reflection roughness, and the thing that's being hooked up, so let's wait for it to render. The thing that's hooked up is a triplanar node, which is relatively new in the Houdini build, at least. I'm not sure how long it was in the Maya build, but this fairly recently got introduced in Houdini. And what triplanar is, basically, it's gonna, you don't need UVs to do any mapping. You can just put down a triplanar node with a texture in it, and what it will do is it will project from multiple sides, so basically 3 sides, and then blend the image together, and then you get a nice unwrapped type of look, which is perfect for something like this without needing to do UV projections. So that's really nice. And what I have in there is just a roughness map. So if this wants to open up, it might take some time. So this is just a roughness map. It's actually an albedo that I'm using for the roughness. But I thought that looked good. There's a separate roughness map here, but I don't think it has a lot of detail. Let me check once it opens up. So that's the actual roughness map, but let me check what the difference in the look is. Not too much. Anyway. So that's hooked up to the roughness. So that's the base material, and also this one is also hooked up to the corrosion material. Corrosion is the second layer, and that one is like a little bit more brownish. And I use lead as a preset, and I just changed reflection colors and stuff like that, and some other settings. And again, I'm using reflection roughness. And what I'm using in the material blender over here, I'm using my wetness attribute, which is a Redshift scalar user data, which lets you use attributes. And the way to use attributes, by the way, is like you need to go to your object, and if you have your object parameters, you can go to attributes. You need to select the attributes that you want to use for anything. So for vertex attributes, because we promoted it, you need to put it in here, so you can select your things in here, else it won't work inside of your shader. So let's go back to our shader network. And what I did in here is I just refitted the range to make it a little bit more pronounced. So let me show you once it starts. Like if I put this back to 1, as you can see, in there is not really a lot happening. They're still brown, but that's from the curvature map, which is the third shader that I'm using. I'm just remapping that, and I'm using that to blend. So you can blend up to 6 materials with the material blender, which is really nice. And then I have a third material, which is also which is like even darker, and I'm using that inside of the crevices. with a curvature to blend. So the curvature is just this curvature map, which is gonna look at the curvature of your thing, and you can either be convex or concave, and I'm using concave because, as you can see, the outsides of my thing are convex, and I just want the like only the stuff that gets corroded is gonna be concave, so that worked really well for me. And you have a radius that you can change. So for this now 0.2 works fine, and I'm gonna go through this a little bit. And what I think I forgot to mention is on my out node, because I used a preset to set up everything. This is gonna be somewhat later. I'm using global illumination. I'm using brute force. Because I already had it set up in my preset, but I'm using brute force for all the rendering stuff. So that's basically that's blending these materials together. Then I'm also using normal maps, and I have two normal maps, one for the inside, one for the outside. And I'm using triplanar projections again. I'm using Redshift vector mix, which is using the same scalar attribute data, and you can just use scalar data to mix vectors. It works fine. It will just input the data in all channels and just mix it and put it to the bump map, and that will just mix the bump, and you have separate control for the inside or the outside, which is convenient, obviously, for this. So not too complex. It's just a little bit tweaking here and there, and yeah. Alright, so now let's enable our asset as well. Go to our out, go to objects, and select our play. Let's do asset. As you can see, now we have our asset corroding away, and already that makes it look a little bit cooler. Let's maybe go to our object level again and turn down the specular scale for this, and go to our shop again, and also have a little bit of less specular for this, and maybe not make it completely refractive. Maybe something like this. Again, you have to just tweak this the way that you like this to look. I'm not gonna go into the complete tweaking of how. I mean, I spent some time tweaking everything, obviously, for my original R&D sample, but I'm gonna leave that up to you. So that's the main settings for this one. There are some some sampling settings. You can, like, if you do final renders, you're gonna obviously put your minimum samples higher and maximum samples higher. I actually didn't use that high samples for my R&D thing because I didn't want to wait super long for my renders. So what I ended up doing is I had I used object IDs. So let me open up After Effects and I can show you what I did exactly there. Right, so now I'm in After Effects, and this is not really complicated comp, and it's not. I'm not going to go over the whole comping stage of this, but like in my original thing, I have I actually like this thing is like this background is usually quite noisy. So let me turn off all this stuff. Like, this is the original. As you can see, there's quite a bit of noise in here. And I just denoised it, so I needed less samples, and I only denoised that part, and I just used a puzzlematte. I used a puzzlematte to mask out my object, so you can basically render out a puzzlematte for for your materials or for your objects. So this is a puzzle mat, and in After Effects you can use the EFX ID select to mask stuff like that out. I think in Nuke you can do it by default. So that allowed me to just denoise my ground, because the thing is I didn't like this part over here, like the top part isn't really that noisy. It was mostly the environment, so I didn't really end up using a lot of samples myself. The way you do those AOVs is you can go to Redshift, go to output AOV, and then you can in AOV you can make an AOV which is a render pass, and you have a puzzle mat, and you can use either material ID or object ID, and you can go to, for example, if I want to do object ID, so I want to, for example, have an object ID for my ground, so let's give it Redshift parameters. You can go like make the ground object ID 1, pyro don't need an object ID, this object ID 2, and then this one's gonna be object ID 3. So I'm gonna go to this one, and then I can go 1, 2, 3, and then if I go to here, I don't like multi-layered EXR files because they're really heavy, so put it to no multi-layer EXR file, and now it will make separate renders for your separate passes. So this is my my puzzle mat. You can use this to mask out objects, to do like the denoising stuff that I did. As you can see, this is much higher resolution than I had for the that I'm doing for the tutorial now. So this is obviously looking a lot better. So yeah, I didn't really do any crazy comping with like a lot of the like I didn't have passes for every separate thing. I wanted to keep it in render as much as possible. It was just an R&D thing anyway. Another thing is obviously gonna use motion blur. Need to enable motion blur, enable deformation motion blur, point level motion blur. So we'll take up all the velocity attributes. So let's go to asset render. I think, not sure if you have to include it, but you can include the point in there. Let's render it. Let's see if it wants to render it. Let's go to our outs, and let's change our shutter to maybe be higher. Check if it works. And we need to, on our asset render, we need to also enable it. So go to render deformation from velocity attribute. And now it's going to be way too blurry, so let's put this just to 1.25. And now we have like a little bit of motion blur in there. So yeah, that's basically the main thing you have to take away from how to render this out. For the smoke, I just have a separate material. So no, not a material shader builder, on a Redshift network, and you have a volume which you can put into the volume tab, and then I need to link this to get this out again anyway. So you can use the density here, and let's duplicate our render node and go to objects and select our pyro and put our IPR, like put this one in here, call this smoke, and this main, and let's also call this like smoke, right? And then this main. So you can have multiple IPRs. So let's put the main, put this in here, hit render. Now it's gonna render the main thing. I'm gonna do the smoke obviously. And I'm not sure why. Oh yeah, this isn't doing anything yet because on my pyro I need to go to Redshift OBA volume, enable volume and Houdini VDB volume primitive. And now as you can see I have my volume rendering, and maybe I want to do like a separate light for my volume to get some more details. So how I can do that is I can make like a Redshift light, call this smoke light maybe, and in our main one objects we only want to use our HDRI, and in our smoke we only want to use our smoke light. So now we have a separate light for our smoke. And render cam. Go to live, we need to go to shader and go to, we need to first put it to an area lights, and now we can go to shader and go to, where is the, okay, contribution scale for volume. So you can turn up your contribution scale, so how much light is going to be contributed to the smoke object. And this is really fast. It was only a couple of seconds a frame for my final render for that thing. So you can just render that out separately in Nuke or After Effects or whatever you're using to comp, or even like you can comp in Houdini. As you know, you have a composite view. So that's basically, I think everything. Oh no, wait, there's one more thing obviously. We're gonna use depth of field, and I'm gonna just blatantly copy my no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna show you how to make an out of focus thing. No, wait, I'm just gonna copy it. Right, so I recently did a tutorial on how to do a out of focus. It's in my 7 quick tips. Just go watch that as well. I'm showing there how to do autofocus. So basically I'm gonna not go over how to build the autofocus. Just gonna use it as it is. So let's go to focus object and let's load in our camera. Let's go to render view and then render cam. Now we should have. Now we need to copy the primitive attribute. So 1 second. Just copying it over from my original file, because I already explained this in another tutorial, so I don't really see the point of explaining this again. So I'm gonna turn this on now, and just tweak your depth of field settings a little bit. So now you can see we have a focus null. We don't want too much depth of field. But like the basics of it is merging your null and your camera, adding a line, measuring it, and then using that inside of your camera. But again, you can see how to do this in my 7 quick tips tutorial. And then basically this is the whole thing. I didn't do any caustics on the fluids because I tried it, but it didn't really add a lot. There wasn't really a lot of light, or the environment just didn't look good with the like if I added caustics it would just look a little bit weird, so I decided to leave him out. It's not too hard to add them in. Sol Espaniona, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he has a great tutorial on how to set up caustics. It's for Maya, but it should be easy enough to follow. So yeah, I think we covered the whole shebang, to be honest. So I'm gonna include all of these files. You can get them on Gumroad. So if you want the files, you can get them there. You can also, of course, just build the thing yourself and learn that way. But yeah, so I hope you found this useful, and keep following me for more tutorials. So take care.